All right, so welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking into a true crime case
Okay.
that I think is both disturbing and really important, and it's something that really kind of highlights how those little things, those seemingly insignificant incidents
Mm-hmm.
can, kind of snowball
Yeah.
and escalate into something really tragic if we're not aware
Right.
of the warning signs. So,
It's about, yeah, I think you're right on with that. This case really does underscore how insidious stalking can be
yeah,
and how it often begins with behaviors that might be dismissed as, just
How?
creepy or odd, but can very quickly spiral
quick,
into
yeah.
something far more dangerous. And I think that's what's really
exactly.
about this case.
Yeah, and it's going to be a tough one. So just a
Yeah.
heads up to all of our listeners out there
Mm-hmm.
that, we're going to be dealing with some really
Yeah.
sensitive topics. So we're going to be exploring the 2007 abduction and murder of Jodie Sanderholm. She was an 18-year-old college student from Arkansas City, Kansas.
Right.
And, by all accounts, she was described as just a bright, kind, and responsible young woman.
Yeah.
She had a loving family, promising future ahead of her,
Absolutely.
and, really just one of those cases that just,
Yeah, and this is, what makes this case
Yeah.
even more unsettling is that her killer, Justin Thurber,
Right.
was actually someone that both she and her family had known for years.
Yeah, and
Yeah, that adds a whole other...
he adds another layer right
Yeah,
into it,
definitely. For sure.
So just to give everyone kind of a brief overview
Yeah.
of the case, Jodie disappeared on January 1st, 2007,
Okay.
and she had just come from a dance practice, and
Yeah.
then she just vanished.
Wow.
Her car was gone. There was no sign of forced entry at her home,
Mm,
and her mail, which she usually collected every day,
right.
was still sitting there untouched.
That's so strange. I
Yeah.
mean, the disruption of her routine is often a key indicator
Huge red flag.
that something is seriously wrong.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, thankfully, her best friend Lori actually came forward with some information. She had actually had a couple of really unsettling encounters
Oh, wow.
with Justin in the days leading up to Jodie's disappearance.
And this is what's so sad about these cases, right?
I know.
These encounters,
Yeah.
they might have seemed minor at the time,
Right.
but looking back, they were really huge red flags that unfortunately weren't fully recognized until after everything happened.
Right. And it's so easy, right, to
Yeah.
have that 20/20 hindsight.
Absolutely.
But, for instance, Lori told police that Justin had actually followed her car
Oh, wow.
after dance practice just a few days before Jodie disappeared.
Hmm.
And she was so uneasy about it that she actually drove to the police station,
Goodness.
hoping that he would just go away.
Oh, my gosh. That's...
Yeah, it was really scary.
It's terrifying.
And I think that, this is something that happens so often
I think so, too.
where, we have this tendency to kind of downplay stalking behavior,
Yeah.
especially if it's someone that we know.
Especially if it's someone familiar.
Yeah, and it's like
It's almost like we don't want to label them as a stalker, even if
right.
their actions are causing us to feel really unsafe.
Exactly, yeah. And Lori even admitted that, initially she just dismissed Justin's behavior as like
Right.
creepy but harmless.
Which unfortunately is something we hear way too often.
That's the time.
It's a common reaction
Yeah.
to just kind of minimize it.
Yeah.
We hesitate to label something as serious as stalking,
Yeah.
particularly when we know the person.
Right.
It's like, oh, it's just Justin.
Yeah.
He's just being weird. He
Right.
wouldn't actually hurt anyone.
Right, exactly. And then,
Right.
later it's like, oh my gosh, how did we... Lori's experience, I think.
Yeah, this is
So-
a good example.
One example of many.
Yeah, and how
Yeah.
these seemingly insignificant acts of unwanted attention, the constant following,
Right.
the just kind of being creepy.
It's so important to recognize these behaviors as early warning signs.
Yes.
And take them seriously because they can escalate
Yeah, absolutely.
to more dangerous and even violent behavior.
Yeah. Thankfully, in this case, the Ark City Police Department responded really quickly and thoroughly to Jodie's disappearance.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, they didn't waste any time with,
Right.
bureaucratic delays.
Yeah.
Or, even worse, victim blaming, which
Actually.
sometimes happens, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah. We see that a lot.
Yeah. So they were very...
And that just wastes valuable time
Exactly.
that could be used to find the missing person.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's really good that they took
Yeah.
it seriously right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were able to actually pretty quickly
Mm,
rule out Jodie's boyfriend, Colby, because he was actually out of state visiting family at the
Right.
time.
Okay.
So then their attention kind of shifted to Justin.
Gotcha.
I think the investigation was
Yeah.
really very methodical.
Uh,
They gathered surveillance footage from the college campus where Jodie had been.
Makes sense.
They interviewed witnesses, and they were really carefully trying to
Right.
debunk Justin's alibi.
So what was his alibi?
Well, Justin claimed to have been at the Cowie County State Fishing Lake
Okay.
with friends on the day that Jodie disappeared.
Mm.
But when investigators followed up on that, they
Right.
interviewed these friends, and guess what? They all denied being with him that day.
Oh, so his alibi fell apart pretty quickly then.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, often when people fabricate a story,
Yeah.
it doesn't take long for it to
Right.
unravel under scrutiny.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in this case, the inconsistencies in his story really just made investigators even more suspicious.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So the investigation took a really dark turn when Justin's ex-girlfriend, Alexis, decided to come forward.
Oh, wow.
And her testimony was truly chilling.
I bet.
I have to say, I really want to commend Alexis for her bravery
Yeah, absolutely.
in coming forward.
That's huge.
Because she really provided crucial evidence and, more importantly,
Yeah.
a glimpse into Justin's really disturbing mindset.
It's so important to have those firsthand accounts that can shed light on, the suspect's true character.
So what Alexis revealed was that Justin actually had some pretty violent tendencies.
Oh.
And he had this obsession with finding the perfect location to hide a body.
Goodness, that's just
And
that's really creepy.
I know, and the fact that
But that suggests a level of premeditation, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's scary.
It suggests that he had been thinking about this.
Yeah.
He had planned it out.
It wasn't just a spur of the moment crime of passion or something.
Right. And to make things even worse, Alexis said that Justin had actually made comments suggesting that his actions were premeditated.
Goodness gracious. So he'd actually spoken about this.
Yes.
That's terrifying.
I know. And to think that those weren't just fleeting thoughts.
Yeah.
Right?
They were actual.
This is something that he had seriously considered.
Scary.
So the investigators continued to piece together the evidence, and they actually found shoe prints matching Justin's in the woods near Jodie's mailbox.
Okay.
So this, of course, completely contradicted his alibi.
Right.
And it indicated that he had been there,
Yeah, the shoe prints near the mailbox are a big deal.
Yeah.
Because it places him at the scene.
At the scene of the crime, yes.
And it really points towards this premeditation.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we've been talking about. It's really concerning.
And then came the discovery of Jodie's belongings.
Oh.
They were found scattered at the fishing lake.
Okay.
The same place Justin claimed to have been.
Right, with his friends.
Yeah, and they found her tigerette jacket, her mail, her dance shoes.
Oh my gosh.
Just discarded.
So the discovery of her belongings at the lake is huge. It further implicates Justin, right?
Right.
But it also suggests a deliberate attempt to
deliver the evidence.
Dispose of evidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like he was trying to cover his tracks.
Yeah, and even with all of this evidence, it was a single hair that was recovered from Jodie's car.
A single hair.
That became the linchpin of the case.
Wow.
DNA testing.
Right, because DNA evidence is so powerful. It's like the smoking gun.
It is.
Irrefutable scientific proof that connects him to Jodie's disappearance.
Right, and it linked that hair definitively to Justin.
Wow.
So that was a major turning point in the investigation.
Of course.
And really kind of blew everything wide open.
Absolutely.
And showed that this was not an isolated incident.
Right.
That there was this pattern of predatory behavior that had been going on for years.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that stalking is rarely an isolated incident, right?
Right.
It's a pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
A dangerous obsession that can escalate over time.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's something really important to remember.
And that DNA evidence, it was like opening a floodgate.
Really?
Yeah, suddenly all of these other women started coming forward.
Oh, wow.
With their own stories of being stalked and harassed.
That's unfortunately something we see a lot with these types of cases.
It is.
When one person comes forward, it gives others the courage to do this.
And it just breaks my heart to hear these women's stories.
I know.
They described how he would follow them home, how he'd send unwanted messages, how he would lurk outside their workplaces.
And it's this pattern of fixation and escalating behavior that's really a classic hallmark of stalking.
And it hits so close to home in this case, too.
Oh.
Because even Jodie's sister, Jennifer,
Wow.
revealed that she had been stalked by Justin.
No way.
Years earlier.
Goodness.
He would park outside the Blockbuster where she worked just to watch her.
Oh my God.
It's so creepy.
That's terrifying.
I know. And to think...
And the fact that he targeted both Jodie and her sister really emphasizes the disturbing nature of his obsession.
Yeah.
It's so important to believe victims
Absolutely.
when they come forward with these stories and not just brush it off as,
right, as overreacting.
Attention-seeking or something like that.
Exactly.
These are serious allegations, and they need to be taken seriously.
It's just infuriating to realize that this behavior went on for so long.
Yeah, it is.
But the good news is that justice did prevail.
Okay, good.
Justin was convicted on all charges: aggravated kidnapping, rape, sodomy, and capital murder.
Wow.
The jury's decision was swift. Only took him 3.5 hours.
That's pretty fast.
To deliver a guilty verdict.
That tells you something right there about how strong the evidence was.
But the story doesn't end there.
Okay.
Jodie's parents, the Sanderholms, became fierce advocates.
Good for them.
For stronger anti-stalking laws in Kansas.
Yeah.
And their hard work
absolutely
led to the passage of Jodie's Law in 2008.
Jodie's Law. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does that law do?
Well, it empowers law enforcement
to
take swifter action in stalking cases.
That's great.
So before, they had to wait until there was actual
physical harm or something.
Yeah, violence or threat.
That's often too late, though.
Exactly.
Oh.
So now, with this law, they can actually intervene before things get out of hand.
That's so important.
And I think that's a crucial step in the right direction.
It's a step towards being proactive rather than reactive.
And it's a powerful legacy, I think, for Jodie and her family.
Yeah, it is.
And, it shows...
It's sad that it took something like this to get the law passed.
It is. It is.
But at least something good came out of it.
And it's a reminder that we have to be proactive.
Absolutely.
We have to be aware of these warning signs and take action to prevent these tragedies.
And we can't wait until it's too late.
Right, absolutely.
Intervene.
This case really underscores how serious stalking is.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And it has such...
a serious crime.
Yeah.
With very real
yes.
and often devastating consequences.
And the big question here, I think, is what can we do?
What can we do, right?
Right.
What can we do to make a difference?
How can we as a society contribute to a culture that takes stalking seriously?
Yes.
And actually supports victims?
It all starts, I think, with recognizing those warning signs, right?
For sure.
Understanding the patterns of behavior.
Yes. And not dismissing those seemingly minor incidents as just harmless crushes or overreactions, because those things can have really devastating consequences.
And we need to challenge those cultural norms that kind of contribute to minimizing the issue.
Minimizing the issue and the underreporting of stalking.
Why is it that so many victims are afraid to come forward?
I know.
They're afraid of not being believed. They're afraid that it will be taken seriously.
Or they blame themselves.
Exactly. So I think that, as individuals and as a society, we need to be having these conversations.
We need to be talking about it more openly.
Yeah, we need to be more aware, more educated about stalking.
Yeah, and we need to make sure that law enforcement agencies have the resources and the training to effectively investigate and prosecute these cases.
And we need to be supporting those organizations that are out there that are dedicated to stalking prevention and victim advocacy.
Absolutely.
Giving them the resources and the visibility that they need.
Exactly. And that includes financial resources, but also just raising awareness, making sure people know that these organizations exist.
Yes, exactly.
And that there is help available.
Because this case, is just one example of this larger problem.
Absolutely.
And it's a reminder that behind the headlines and the statistics, there are real people whose lives have been shattered by stalking.
Absolutely.
So we need to honor their stories.
Right. We do.
We need to honor their experiences.
By working to prevent it from happening to others.
By working together to create a safer world.
Right, a world where everyone feels seen and heard and protected.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yes, Absolutely.
And I think it's achievable.
I agree.
It's just going to take a lot of work.
Yeah, both.
And a lot of people coming together.
It's so important. And, and this has been a lot of heavy information.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to talk about these things.
It's important to bring these issues to light.
And hopefully, this will spark some conversations.
Hopefully.
So we're going to be back in just a minute to continue our deep dive.
Sounds good.
Into the case of Jodie Sanderholm. So stay with us.
I'm ready. It really highlights how this wasn't an isolated incident.
Yeah, and it's almost like, we talked about that DNA evidence being like a floodgate.
Right.
And then suddenly all these testimonies just started pouring in.
And it was like, bam.
Yeah.
This pattern of behavior became crystal clear.
And what really struck me, going through the research for this was the duration of this behavior.
Yeah, that's what's particularly striking to me as well.
It wasn't like it just started recently.
Right.
This went back years.
It wasn't a sudden onset.
Right.
This was
like even back to his teenage years.
A long-standing pattern of behavior.
Yeah, and I think, we learned that Justin had actually been fixated on Jodie and Jennifer for a long time.
Really?
He'd even admitted to watching them as children.
Wow.
Sneaking into their yard to peer through their windows.
That sends chills down my spine.
I know.
That is so creepy.
That's a detail that,
just the thought of someone watching you without you knowing.
Especially as a child.
That's a nightmare.
It's just horrifying to think about.
It is.
And I think it really emphasizes just how deeply rooted this obsession was.
That's the thing about stalking. It's often this deeply ingrained pattern, this manifestation of control and obsession.
And it makes you think, too, about, the larger societal context here.
Right.
Why do we so often dismiss stalking as just a crush? Why do we hear those phrases like, boys will be boys?
Yeah. Why do we minimize it?
Why do victims often hesitate to come forward?
Right.
Because they're afraid they won't be believed.
They're afraid they won't be taken seriously.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this incredibly complex and just heartbreaking case, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay.
What can we do?
What can we do as individuals, as a society,
to make a difference here?
To prevent this from happening.
To ensure that victims are heard and truly protected.
It's a big question.
It's a big question.
But it's a question.
But it's one that
we need to be asking ourselves.
I have to ask ourselves.
We need to educate ourselves about the dynamics of stalking.
Yeah.
We need to recognize the red flags.
Absolutely.
And we need to challenge those dismissive attitudes.
Yes.
That just perpetuate the cycle of abuse.
Because it's not just about individual actions here.
Right.
We need to be having those conversations within our families.
Within our communities.
In our community.
Your workplaces.
Workplaces.
We need to create those safe spaces.
Yeah.
Where victims feel comfortable sharing their experiences.
Without fear of judgment or disbelief.
And we need to be supporting those organizations that are dedicated to stalking prevention.
That are working tirelessly to address this often hidden crime.
And I think perhaps most importantly, we need to believe survivors.
That is so crucial.
We need to listen to them with empathy.
Yeah.
We need to validate their experiences.
And offer unwavering support.
Because this is a call to action.
It is.
We have to break the silence surrounding stalking.
We need to create a future.
And create a future
where everyone feels safe, respected,
and empowered to live free from fear.
Yes. And harassment.
This deep dive has been tough.
Yeah.
But I hope it's been eye-opening.
It has been, and it's been illuminating.
Yeah.
The case of Jodie Sanderholm is just a tragic reminder of what can happen.
Of the devastating consequences.
When we ignore those warning signs.
Right.
But it's also
a call to action.
A call to action for all of us to step up.
Yes.
To become more informed.
Be more aware.
More aware.
And be more proactive.
And if you are out there.
And remember.
If you or someone you know
and this is something
experiencing stalking
that's hitting close to home,
you are not alone.
You're not.
There are resources available.
There are people who care.
There's a path towards safety and healing.
And don't hesitate to reach out for help.
Don't hesitate to reach out.
You deserve to feel safe.
You deserve to feel safe.
And respected.
And respected.
It's almost unbelievable.
It is, right?
How many women came forward after Justin was arrested? It really shows you, that this wasn't just some isolated incident.
Yeah, and I think one thing that stood out to me was that...
What's that?
He had actually admitted to watching them as children.
Really?
Like sneaking into their yard to peer through their windows? I mean...
Oh my goodness.
I know. That's chilling.
That's a detail that I just...
Out of like something.
I know. It sends shivers down my spine.
Out of a horror movie.
It does, yeah.
And it just emphasizes how deep-seated this obsession was.
Right. It wasn't just something that like popped up overnight.
Right, exactly.
It was going on for years.
In the years.
And it makes you think about, you know, the societal factors that maybe contribute to how we think about stalking. You know, like, why do we so often dismiss it as just a crush or...
Oh, he's just infatuated.
Right.
He just doesn't know how to express his feelings.
Or like we said, boys will be boys, that kind of thing. Yeah, and those types of phrases are so dangerous because...
They are, because
they minimize?
They minimize it and they normalize it.
The seriousness.
And they make victims feel like they can't come forward.
Exactly.
They won't be taken seriously.
And so often they're right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yes, true.
There's still a lot of stigma surrounding stalking.
And a lot of victim blaming, unfortunately.
Victim blaming, yeah.
So, you know... I think as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into this really complex and heartbreaking case, I want to pose this question to our listeners.
Yeah.
What can we do?
What can we as individuals
to make a real difference?
Right. How do we
how do we actually
shift the narrative?
Shift that narrative around stalking and ensure that victims are not just heard, but truly protected.
That they feel empowered.
Yes.
Because
it's a multifaceted challenge. Right?
It is.
It requires both individual and collective action.
And collective action, yeah.
So I think, you know, educating ourselves.
Right. We have to educate ourselves.
Understanding what stalking is.
What it looks like.
What the red flags are.
Recognizing those red flags.
And then challenging those dismissive attitudes you were just talking about.
Calling people out.
Yeah, when you hear those phrases.
When you hear someone dismissing
it as no big deal.
Exactly. Say something.
Say something. Yeah, because those things really do matter.
They perpetuate the problem.
They do.
They do.
And then, you know.
And then we have to create those safe spaces.
Yeah.
In our families.
In our community.
In our workplaces.
Our workplaces, yeah.
Where victims feel like they can actually speak up without fear of judgment or disbelief.
And we have to support those organizations.
Yes. Who are on the front lines.
The advocates, the support groups.
Providing them
the researchers.
We need all hands on deck.
Yes, absolutely.
This is a community effort.
And then, you know, maybe most importantly, we have to believe survivors.
Yes.
We have to listen to their stories with empathy.
Listen with empathy.
Validate their experiences.
Offer support.
Offer support.
Without judgment.
So, you know, it's been a heavy deep dive.
It has.
It has. It's been a lot of information.
A lot to unpack.
But I hope that it's been illuminating.
I hope so, too.
For our listeners.
I think the case of Jodie Sanderholm is a powerful reminder of the real consequences.
The very real consequences.
Kind of shocking.
And the importance of taking action.
Yeah, we can't just sit back.
We have to be proactive.
And wait for something bad to happen.
Absolutely.
We have to be proactive.
We have to speak up.
In preventing it.
And we have to believe survivors.
And if you're out there.
And if you are out there.
And you're experiencing stalking.
You're not alone.
Please reach out.
Please reach out for help.
There are resources available.
There are people who care.
You are not alone.
And you deserve to feel safe.
And you deserve to feel safe.
And respected.
So, that wraps up another deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back soon.
Absolutely.
With another fascinating case.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, stay safe out there, everybody.